think we got this whole thing.
We were actually knew what we were doing. If we weren't amateurs, radio amateurs, we would have done all this and then gone live, right?
Oh,
if we're professionals.
You're absolutely right. Well, thanks for everybody's patience. I know we're running about 10 minutes late. I want to welcome you to the March edition of the Parker Radio Association Elmer Night. And greetings from YouTube Live. This is Dan and 2SRK, live from the SRK Shack here in Aurora, Colorado. And again, welcome to the Parker Radio Association. Just a kind of a brief update for those that are not familiar with us. We're a group of amateur radio enthusiasts out of the Southeast Denver metro area, and about 140 members strong. So our goal and our mission is to not only develop, enhance, and maintain radio systems for communication and benefit to the community, but we follow 3 pretty simple rules: play radio, have fun, and keep the squelch loose. So glad you're here tonight, and again, want to welcome you. We have a cast of characters, also known as our leadership committee. We'll start kicking it over to them. I'm going to introduce first introduce Justin, AE2L. Justin, good evening.
Hey Dan, are we switching up the view, or am I just talking on YouTube? What's happening?
I think you're just talking. I switched
Cool.
the view over, so.
Yeah, well, welcome everybody, and thanks for bearing with us as we get started on this initial go around, and looking forward to hearing what Paul's got to say tonight for NVIS, and welcome to the inaugural online Elmer Night. Sounds like we are making do with the circumstances of everybody being stayed at home. Nowhere better to be than in the ham radio shack.
Absolutely. Well, Justin, thanks. Next, we have Ray, N0KEG. Ray, we'll kick it over to you. Good evening.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome to my shack. I don't know what the video is doing, but I'm sorry if you have to look at my shack. But yeah, it's glad to see everybody there virtually. I see everybody on chat. That's cool. We got a great turnout, and one way or another, we're gonna make do. We're gonna find a way to communicate. We're hams. That's what we do. So. Without further ado, back to Dan.
All right, Justin. Thanks again. Glad you're here. Oh yeah, that was Ray. Sorry. Yeah, it's what happens when you have like 5 different screens going.
Yeah, sorry, let's go back to call signs, everybody.
We'll do that. Next, we'll introduce Elizabeth, N1RDH. Elizabeth, good evening. Glad to have you here.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Elizabeth, N1RDH. I am the secretary of the Parker Radio Association. I'm here for the Elmer Night on YouTube Live and excited to learn what Paul has to present us. I'm learning as well. So I hope everybody can join in and learn lots.
All right. Thanks, Elizabeth. Great to have you on for sure. All right, let's see, who else do we have here in the cast of characters? Let's kick it over to Wayne, N0AD. Wayne, good evening.
Hey, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Elmer Night. As you can see in the chat and the actual live on YouTube Live, there is a little bit of delay. So we'll try to get to your questions as soon as possible. There just might be a 20-second delay in the answers, but yeah, definitely welcome. We have a good presentation, and maybe this should be might be something we do here moving forward every once in a while. But yeah, welcome, and glad everyone's here. So back over to you there, Dan.
All right, Ray. See, I did it again. Thanks, Wayne. I was looking at Ray as he came up on my other screen. Next, we have Patrick, AI8C. Patrick, good evening.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks.
Uh-oh.
Full duplex communications is kind of far into a ham.
That sounded like the like a D-story loop. Uh-oh. Patrick's got a loop going.
Yeah, you must have 2 computers going with the Hangout or YouTube and Hangout on the same machine.
You want us to come back to you? All right, or you could just hang up. I mean
No, I got
that's
it.
fine as well.
I'm here.
All right, he's back. Well, we'll get you
Yeah,
pinned up to
sorry.
the
I
screen
thought I
there.
lost the window and reopened it, so I had 2 tabs joined to it. So
No, it's all good.
thanks everybody for coming. It's great to be on. And I'm Patrick Malone, AIHC, the Vice President of the Parker Radio Association, and give it back over to you, Dan.
All right, thanks, Patrick. Again, glad you're here tonight. Let's see, have I missed anyone in the leadership committee? I think I got everyone. I think we're good. All right. Well, since we have everyone on, for those who aren't familiar with who we are, since you're probably online, obviously watching us here tonight, be sure to check out our website, www.parkerradio.org. All kinds of really cool stuff that's out over there. You can see everything that we have going. We do hold 3 nets a week, which is pretty cool. 2 digital nets, or excuse me, 1 digital net that's held on Monday night. So all the information is there about our nets. So if you're checking in from another state or another country, you can actually get in via D-Star, DMR, System Fusion. The options are endless. So again, check out our website, www.parkerradio.org. And again, since this is our inaugural event, we promised it wasn't going to be pretty or very well polished, as you're probably seeing tonight. So thanks for your patience so far. Got a great presentation lined up tonight by Paul, AC5S, on NVIS. So some really good stuff that's going to be coming from there. And we're actually going to kick this whole thing off. So give me a second. We're going to get this queued up for Paul, and we'll get his presentation rocking and rolling here. So let's see if we can get that going here real well. Let's see here. As I said, it wasn't going to be too pretty, but we're going to do our best with this here. Hi, Patrick.
Yeah, and I was also going to say, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We'll get to them when we see them. But yeah, we have 33 people so far.
Awesome.
And Randy, welcome to the chat there.
No, we don't want that up. Let's see here. All right. Let's see if we can get the presentation mode back up again. We had it there for a minute.
Oh, Justin left.
We lost Justin.
Oh, he's back.
I was like just looking out the window, and there's like a
see
deer walking by. I was like, what the? Anyway.
So the good news is I got Justin there. Let's see if we can get this.
And we have a question in the comments. What Heil mic is that, Dan?
Oh, real good question. So yeah, so I'm actually using a Heil PR 781G, G for gold.
All right.
Boy, everybody's being really patient with me, so thank you.
And that mic has great audio. What's it plugged into?
It's actually plugged into a ICOM 7300. All right. So Justin, we got you pinned here. Now, what I need to do is I'm going to do this a different way. Watch this. We're going to skin this cat here real easily. Watch this. So hopefully this is working. Ha ha! All right. See, there's always a way to skin a cat. And Paul, hopefully you're seeing this on your screen now.
I am not.
You're not.
I am
Not yet. I see Google on the screen. Now I see you going into your Gmail, opening the presentation. Yeah, I think you're getting there.
Well, we're getting closer.
Does your kid know they're on YouTube?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I told him.
Do your dog.
All right, Paul, is it showing yet?
I'm not seeing anything on my screen.
That's on YouTube, but it's a little off.
On YouTube, but it's off to the right. There you
go. I don't know what we're seeing now. Yeah, Dan, when you maximize, it's going, we see that little, that spot there.
Oh, all right. Now I see what's going on. Let's try this. How about now?
And we wait 15 seconds.
So do we have success yet? Let me see here.
No, there's like
oh yeah. Yeah, that's really odd.
That's nice, Patrick.
All right, let's try this again. How about now? No, it's still probably like off center, isn't it?
There's going to take a minute for it to catch up. Hold on.
Yeah, if you just show the window, Dan, it's like we're seeing the bottom portion of your window, not the top and then not the left. So
yeah, I don't know what the story is there.
Perhaps just do it where we see the little slide preview.
Let's see what this does. How about now?
Randy just says, let's discuss NVI.
So, hey, Dan, I can go through the presentation just from an audio standpoint.
Are you guys seeing it now?
NVI.
Really? On YouTube or on Hangouts?
Yeah, YouTube.
Is my audio coming through YouTube?
That's it right there.
All right.
Don't
I'm not going to move then. Well.
Yeah, it's perfect on there now.
Oh, on YouTube, right?
Yes.
Good.
Okay, so I can't see it. So what I'm going to do is.
Well, you have to pull up YouTube, Paul.
Do what?
Yeah.
You need to pull up YouTube, mute it.
Oh, here you go. You see me?
Okay.
So just pull up a second window and go to our, and go to the live chat, but mute it because you're going to hear echo. Well, you're going to hear a delay.
We're good. Forrest says he can see it.
Yeah, and everybody can hear Paul.
Yeah, I think if you guys just coordinate.
Yeah.
I think you guys work it out.
All
okay,
right, Paul.
how does that sound? Can you hear my audio?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. We're ready. Well, without further ado, we'll thanks for your patience yet again. We'll kick it over to Paul AC5S on his presentation tonight on NVIS. Paul, over to you.
Yeah, welcome everybody. I am the co-chairman of the Elmering Committee, and the other chairperson is Terry WB3 EVZ, and Terry says he's in Salt Lake City working. I didn't think anybody was working right now, but anyway, Terry sends his best wishes, and from both of us, we welcome you to Elmer Night tonight. Presentation tonight is going to be on NVIS. Okay, Dan.
All right, well.
Okay, Dan.
All right, it's, yeah, we've got about a 40-second delay.
Got it. No problem.
But your audio is going to match what they see.
Got it.
We just won't be able to confirm.
So Paul, hopefully right now, coming up on YouTube, you should be seeing NVIS and what is NVIS.
Okay. What is NVIS? Next, Dan. So here's what I'm going to suggest with the delay, Dan.
Yep.
Why don't you count about 7 seconds and then just go to the next slide.
All right. So we got what is NVIS and what it means.
So NVIS, or some people call it NVIS. That's a Justin term, and I've heard other people use that as well. Means near vertical incident skywave. Next.
Okay.
So NVIS is the opposite of DX. So we're going to be talking about short range communications as opposed to DX, which we try to use for long range communications.
What kind of distance are we talking about, Paul?
So typically the distance on NVIS is anywhere from 0 to 250 miles. And so you can see how this is a very, very interesting mode, because it can be used to communicate locally. And the military has used it for years and years and years to communicate to units out in the battlefield of distances up to 250 miles. Was even used back in the Second World War, and is still used today by the U.S. military.
Okay, Paul, I'm good. So we're on ordinary propagation.
Yeah, so ordinary propagation is we've all learned what that means pretty much. We use frequencies that bounce off different layers of the ionosphere, and they travel hopefully great distances. And our takeoff angle for DX is going to be low. So we use a low angle from the antenna for DX communications. Now, the other thing about ordinary propagation is
Go ahead, Paul.
I'm working on some stuff here, Dan.
Yep, we're good.
Help you out. Help you out with that.
Paul, as far as to travel a long distance, the signal has a takeoff at a low angle. Is that about 30 degrees or less?
Yeah. So when we're trying to operate DX, we want a low takeoff angle, 30 degrees or less, so it can travel the maximum distance before it arrives at the ionosphere.
Talk to me about that long gap before the signal returns to Earth.
Yeah, that gap is based on a variety of different things. It's based on the solar cycle, the condition of the different layers of the ionosphere that we use, and stand by. I'm about on the slide here, Dan. And so if you look at the skip zone is called the dead zone. And the next slide is going to show you a fairly good representation of ordinary propagation. It shows a signal coming up into the ionosphere, bouncing off one of the different layers of the ionosphere, and then coming back down to Earth. And there's a great representation of that courtesy of Barrett Communications. Now, this is ordinary DX. What we're trying to do is to shorten that to where the distance is anywhere from a couple miles all the way out to 250 miles, but typically no further than that at all. So to travel a medium distance, and I'm going to call 250 miles a medium distance, the signal must have a very high takeoff angle. And so your antenna has to have a takeoff angle typically between 60 and 90 degrees. And that's very, very different than what we currently use with our normal HF antennas. When we go to field day, QRP activities, whatever the case is, we use much, much lower takeoff angles. So if we have a 60 to 90 degree takeoff angle, then what happens is that the signal returns from the ionosphere at a similar angle, covering somewhere between 0 and 250 miles. So thus, this fills the skip or dead zone. So kind of like taking a hose and spraying it up into an umbrella, right? So you got the hose, you spray it to the umbrella, it hits the umbrella, and it pretty much just comes straight back down. That's exactly what we're talking about with NVIS or NVIS communications. Now, this next graph gives you kind of an idea of how NVIS works, and the reason it's good out to short range or long range. It's used by the military because a lot of times the military is communicating with units that are literally 15, 20 miles away, 30 miles away, 80 miles, maybe 250 miles. But usually the man-pack radios and the vehicle radios that are in use by the military today are not designed to, for instance, communicate between Kuwait and the Pentagon. That's not the transmission system that they would use, but they do use the NVIS short-range communications. Now, if you want to use NVIS successfully, and by the way, NVIS is a lot of fun, and it's something that a lot of us in the club have tried out from time to time. Antennas are easy to build. So first thing that you need to do is you want a high angle of radiation from the antenna. Very important. You want to minimize ground wave as it will interfere with returning skywave. Think about that for a second. And most importantly, choose the correct frequency band. If you go too high in frequency, your signal will pass right through the ionosphere into space. So it's very, very important to choose the correct frequency. Now, that is something that literally we have 5 slides on, but I took those out for tonight. So we could spend a whole night on that, but we're going to just go ahead and talk a little bit about now choosing the right frequency at a high level of view. The ionosphere has DE, F1, and F2 layers. D, to a lesser extent, E layers attenuate and absorb signals. The best returns for NVIS is going to be from F2 layer. And at any one time, we need to know the frequency of the F2 layer, the critical frequency of F2. Now, the ionosphere, let's see, thank you, you're back there. The best return layer is F2. And if we determine what the critical frequency is for F2, then we'll have a good chance of making the communications work. The optimum frequency for any NVIS communication is always about 10% below the critical frequency. And again, this is something we could talk about for several hours, but I hope to just spur some interest. And if you are looking at NVIS, make sure you do look at the critical frequency in more detail. Okay, so let's talk about in practice. How do we work NVIS? Well, usually, in most cases, 40 meters or 7 megahertz is the highest band that we can use NVIS on. 3.5 megahertz or 80 meters is the next lowest band. And 160 meters, known as the top band for those of us that have worked all states on 160, is the lowest frequency. 80 meters and 160 meters strongly affected during the day by absorption, so we don't do much NVIS on those two frequencies. But the noise at night sometimes is difficult in the summer on those two bands, but you still can use NVIS for short range communications on 80 and 160 meters. Also, there's a need for a middle frequency band, and we have it. Amateurs have access to it. It is 5 megahertz. So absolutely, positively, if you have not operated on 60 meters, you should definitely check that out. All modern radios, anyway, made the last 10 to 15 years, maybe 20 years, do have the capability of operating on 5 megahertz. It is channelized, so keep that in mind. All right. So we talked about the antenna side a little bit, and I'm going to just go through it here again. High angle, 60 to 90 degrees of radiation for the NVIS signal. We cannot use vertical antennas. They are designed for low angle of departure of the signal, and they don't work very well. A half-wave dipole at textbook height would be about 0.5 wavelengths above the ground and produces a low angle radiation. But if lowered to 0.25 wavelengths or below, it produces high angle of radiation. So you can use dipoles if you get them closer to the ground, but you don't want to get them too close to the ground, because if you do, the ground will absorb the signal, and instead of going straight up, it will basically just attenuate. So don't count out a dipole antenna when you're looking at NVIS. The next slide, when we get to it, is a classic example of an NVIS antenna. And I built one of these one time. I had a great time with it. It was fantastic. And especially for us sometimes communicating on HF after nets, oh my gosh, this is a perfect antenna for that. If we all built one of these, it would be absolutely fantastic. And you can kind of see how this is built. The lower wire is a reflector to keep the signal from being absorbed by the ground, and the higher element is your driven element. And you can look into that in a little more detail online as you get more interested in NVIS, because it is very cool. And again, for after our net activity, it would be fantastic. You know, the first time NVIS was really used a whole lot was back in World War II. And the Allies used it for D-Day. After testing it for a couple of years and right up till D-Day, they used it quite a bit. And then we don't have it in this presentation, but on the full presentation, there's a picture of a German patrol vehicle, and it has wrapped all around the top of the vehicle a NVIS antenna. And Peter, certainly, and if you've seen any Peter's presentations, he can talk about this in great detail, but definitely positively was used by the Germans to a very great extent. And you can still see quite a few pictures of German vehicles with NVIS antennas attached to the top of communications vehicles. Pretty cool. Okay. NVIS summary. Short range communications, 0 to 250 miles, high angle, 60 to 90 degrees skywave. You need to come up with the right frequency based on the conditions of the ionosphere. And so that'd be the conditions of whether it be day or night, that type of thing. You have to run horizontal antennas. Vertical antennas will not work, but magnetic loops can work, and can work very well. And that's a whole nother topic. Antennas must be low, between 0.25 and 0.15 of a wavelength above the ground. You should have a reflector, so you don't absorb the signal doesn't get absorbed by the ground, the actual ground that you stand on. And the antenna, by the way, these NVIS antennas are omnidirectional. Think about that for just a minute and how much fun we could have with that. And then there is several different diagrams on the internet of people building multi-band NVIS antennas. Okay, so that diagram that we showed earlier, instead of having one wire across the top, there'd be 3 wires, and they'd all be cut to different frequencies. And so I'd say get out your get out your wire and start building some stuff. So I want to thank a couple people. I want to thank a couple people to put these slides together originally. Gordon Adams, G3LEQ, and Paul Gaskell, GM4WO, and they gave us permission to use these slides and also their full presentation. So thank you for being here tonight. We do have the full presentation available if you'd like to see it, and it does go into quite a bit more detail on antennas, on the different types of antennas that are available, and more explanation of the critical frequency. Because if you're going to do NVIS, the most important thing in anything that I showed you tonight is the critical frequency. And that's the piece that you really need to understand and spend quite a bit of time working with and understanding before you get involved in this. So I hope this spurred some interest. And thanks again. Terry, WB3EVZ, says hello from Salt Lake City. And I'll turn it back to Net Control.
Hey, thanks, Paul. Real good stuff there for sure. And I know everybody's taking a nice look at Justin here. Hello, Justin. Now, hopefully we have me back into presenter mode. So, no, Paul, great job. Certainly want to thank you for that. And scrolling through here, just some of the things that we have here going on. Just taking a look at some questions, and I want to throw it out to the group here. If there were any questions, Wayne, did you see any questions that came up in the chat room for NVIS?
The only questions that I saw was Kathy had asked kind of like 80 meters, and John had answered back K0 PCI. 80 meters suffers from the absorption during the day and noise at night the same way 160 meters does. Of any other questions? Not on NVIS that I could see, no.
Yeah, so Mike wants to know about the critical frequency. How do you determine the right frequencies to use?
Is that for me?
Yes, sir.
Stand by. Well, we typically are going to be using 4 different bands, 40 meters, 60 meters, 80 meters, and 160 meters. So you would utilize those bands the same way you utilize them for any other type of communications. Determine whether or not the bands are open by listening to beacons and listening for other conversations on the band that may be within that 0 to 250 mile distance. And I have a couple other slides on it that I could go through, but I don't have access to them right now. So that's the best I can give you right now. 40 meters, 60 meters, 80 meters, and 160 meters. And it's still based on propagation.
All right. Just in time for a repeater ID. There was another question that was brought up by T. Chris, who not related to NVIS, but he has a DMR radio, and he admits that the learning curve is steep. Chris, we can tell you the learning curve is steep with things like that. We do have some training that is available. Typically, these Elmer Nights are held at the Douglas County Library in Parker, and we usually break out into discussion groups. We help people program radios. We help people with NVIS. We do breakdowns of DMR, D-Star, System Fusion, what the difference is between them. But obviously, Chris, we'll have to put on maybe another session where we get a recording of things like this, where we can get not only some updates on the basics of DMR, but we'll also be able to set up some training. So hopefully we'll be able to do that online as well.
One comment, Dan, there's there's an awful lot of, since we're here on YouTube, there are an awful lot of videos on DMR radios on YouTube as well. It's also a really good resource for people looking for information.
No, great point, Justin, for sure. No, thanks for sending that over. Wayne, I know you've been keeping a good eye on the chat room. Has there been anything else that you've seen to come across that we need to address?
No, just one other thing that I wanted to add. There are quite a few people in the club that have different radios. I'm sure we could, provide a code plug that they could pull into the radio or load it into the software and pick out the parts and, cater it to what they would like. Ed had a question about, let's see, going to a World War II German truck, how can a portable antenna be set up? Was another question that was posted there. Just one thing I wanted to mention about NVIS. When you're talking, it's short range, but you can literally hit coast to coast with an NVIS antenna. I know KC0RF has an NVIS antenna that's 6 feet off the ground that he talks California to Florida with. And it's on the top of this fence line, running parallel with the fence. And I'm looking at any other.
So maybe the portable setup. I don't know if we answered his question there.
It would need to be. I can make a couple comments on that. Let me give you an example. Let's say somebody's running a 102-inch whip antenna mobile, like John N4SJW used to do, and he ran it in the vertical position. In order for that antenna to work for NVIS, you would need to take the antenna at its tip and bend it all the way down to where it could be secured towards the hood of the vehicle. If it was mounted on the rear bumper, then the antenna would need to fold or bend forward, and you would need to tie it off at the front of the vehicle, and that would allow you to operate NVIS from a mobile 102-inch whip. The other way to do it is to look at any vehicle today that has a luggage rack, and if you can envision the luggage rack being much larger but in the same horizontal plane. This is how some people build NVIS antennas that way as well. It just looks like a big luggage rack, but it extends all the way from the front of the vehicle to all the way to the back of the vehicle, and the same width as the vehicle, if you can imagine that. Because you need to get these antennas horizontal. Those are just two options that you could look at.
Hey, Wayne, I think you're being called on the repeater.
What, who, me?
No, Wayne.
Oh.
John's calling me on the repeater. His ears must be burning.
All right.
So yeah, Joshua had W0EXP had some of the same questions about thoughts on a mobile NVIS mounted on a vehicle. So as Paul kind of pointed out, John N4SJW at Field Day had that mounted up where the feed point was on the rear bumper and then went over and attached towards the front bumper. So definitely a neat setup there for sure. Checking the chat room one more time. Wayne, are you seeing anything that I may have missed?
No, they were talking about the mobile. I think everything that was brought up, Paul addressed. Any thoughts on a mobile NVIS mounted on a vehicle? As Paul said, a vertical with with it bent over towards the front of the car. Robert just put the critical frequency, I believe, the MUF, the maximum usable frequency you would see on the solar data tables on QRZ. I don't see any others. any new ones at least.
All right. Well, kind of throw it back around the horn. Justin, anything you'd like to add tonight?
I think this is an interesting new format for sure, and a lot of lessons learned. And you can't look at the YouTube screen. I've actually got YouTube up twice, and it's even more confusing because they're both showing different things. So very interesting. Be interested to see what people think about the format in lieu of an Elmer Night. Obviously, face-to-face is better because you can program my radio and whatnot, but interested to see what people think about the making it work and having fun with loose squelch.
Isn't that the truth? Well, thanks, Justin. Appreciate you hanging out with us tonight. Wayne, anything else you'd like to add tonight?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I kind of like the way, we definitely got a couple bugs that we need to iron out. Let me just throw out in the group any other questions. See to the group, but I think the format, we just have a couple things we need to iron out. I definitely think maybe the next Elmer that we do, we'll definitely have those ironed out there. But another question that just got brought up, what would you suggest for beginners to start learning the ropes as for ham radio?
Yeah, I saw that question come up from Rhonda. So Rhonda, thanks for joining us tonight. Number one, glad you're here. Number two is to really try to find a radio club or an organization local to you that that you're comfortable with, and certainly. Oh, Paul wants to come back in, so we're gonna let Paul back into the meeting. Certainly find a radio organization or a club nearby you that number one, our mantra is to play radio, have fun, keep the squelch loose. We do recognize that this is a hobby. It's also a service to the community as well. But a lot of us have professional careers that we obviously have to take very, very seriously in our lives. And I think too is that as long as we're playing radio, we're having fun, we're keeping the squelch loose, it really helps to drive a lot of momentum in the organization. The other thing I would suggest is ask a lot of questions. Ask. It's the questions that you don't ask, which are the wrong questions. So ask as many questions as possible. If somebody in an amateur radio organization ever makes fun of you for asking a question, find a door and run. Any question that you have should be out on the table, should be easy to answer for a group like us or a group of Elmers. And the best part is that if we can't answer it, we're certainly going to find the resources, and we're going to learn ourselves something in the whole process. So certainly good to have you on here, Rhonda, and thanks for joining tonight. Wayne, any other questions that you saw?
No, nothing new as of yet. Nothing new as of yet. Only other thing that I would say we could add is, the events we have coming up this weekend. The CQ Worldwide Sideband Contest is coming up this weekend, Friday night, I think.
Did you see that if you want to win, if you're going for top 3, you actually have to record all your QSOs?
Really?
Continuous recording if you want to place top 3. Anyway,
wow.
I thought that was interesting.
You're kidding.
No, I was reading the rules, and if you want to, hang on, I can pull it up right here. It says, if you want to, so if you're, sorry about this is really not exciting. Yeah, so audio recording. Any single operator entrant competing for a top 3 finish at the world, continent, or USA levels must record the transmitted and received audio as heard by the operator for the duration of the contest operation.
Wow.
The recording must be in a common format, should include the audio to each ear as a separate channel. The recording must be continuous, and they might request it from the committee, and if you can't make it, you're DQ'd. Anyway, pretty interesting. It might be good to talk about contesting a little bit, Dan.
Yeah, that's that's a great point, Justin. That's actually the first time I've ever heard that brought up as a requirement. If you're trying to chase top three, is to record all your QSOs. That's a new one on me. Hopefully, there's never going to be requirements for us to do it on YouTube Live, because we would be butchering that to death here tonight. But for the inaugural kickoff, it's kind of neat to use this format. Yeah, contesting can be a lot of fun. I know I have kind of dipped my toe into it when I first got into the hobby back in 90 something, is the early 90s is when I got licensed. But the experience of contesting and it's the biggest non-contest contest, which is the ARRL Field Day that takes place the last full weekend in June. I can remember even before I had a driver's license, got my ham radio license, met up with a group where I grew up in southern New Jersey. Yay to all the two-landers out there. And one of the neat things in going through that process was you really honed in your listening and copying skills. And the one neat part about amateur radio that you can really apply to life is that you have two ears and one mouth for a reason. So listening and copying is such an integral part of amateur radio, not necessarily getting on the air and getting your call sign out there. But boy, the listening and copying is 2/3 of the equation. So contesting can be a lot of fun. It can be really frustrating. And the frustrating parts is that somebody doesn't hear you. You hear them clear, but they're not hearing you. You're not busting a pile up. But it's certainly a great lesson in patience. That's for darn sure.
Well, and to add to that, Dan, there really is two kinds of contesting. You're either hunting and pecking, trying to find, people that you're trying to break through the pileups to get those countries, or you're sitting on a frequency and you're the one calling CQ and you're controlling the pileup and you're controlling the flow. So, and we've, I've worked with Elizabeth and ran a station for a day. Field day's coming up. So that's going to be a lot of fun, but I enjoy contests quite a bit just to, get on the radio and really run it.
No, great points there, Wayne, for sure. Ray, we'll throw it over to you. Any pearls of wisdom you'd like to add for us tonight?
I don't know about wisdom, but one thing that comes to mind though, is, regarding the presentation, a lot of us are in HOAs. A lot of us are doing all kinds of ridiculous things just to be able to get on the air. A lot of us are probably running NVIS and you never thought about it or don't know it. But so be that as it is, I think this is a good opportunity to start noodling about, making a more efficient NVIS antenna, and that stuff like that would probably be a little more HOA friendly. So I'm going to think about different ways to run a reflector, or maybe flatten out parts of the antenna that might be a little zigzagged or bent in a tree or something right now, just to get a more stable NVIS pattern out of it. So food for thought. That's all.
Oh, good deal. No, it might actually be a great field day project for us for sure. So good stuff there. Elizabeth, let's throw it over to you, our fearless secretary. Any pearls of wisdom for the March rendition of Elmer Night?
Pearls of wisdom. Mine would be, I'm a new ham, so I'm listening. I'm absorbing everything that you said, Dan, as far as the listening skills. That's important, and I practice quite often. And it was fun with Wayne when we were running that station a couple weekends ago. If you want to do it again, Wayne, he's going to drag me by the hair.
I'm ready.
Yeah.
6 feet apart.
I know. And thanks to you guys for being so awesome, so knowledgeable, helpful. Paul, thanks again for your presentation. Okay, back to you guys.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Good stuff for sure. Patrick, we'll throw it over to you. Any closing comments for tonight?
We'll see if I can do it right this time. I think this is awesome. Maybe setting a precedence for some other things in the future for sure. Dan, thanks for hosting, and Paul, thanks for presenting, and to the leadership team for helping heckle or guide those guys while they were going through everything. And I'm glad to see the good turnout with membership and hopefully some visitors there in the YouTube chat room. And I will give it back to you, Dan. Thanks, everybody.
You're welcome. Thanks, Patrick. Glad you're here for sure. Let's see
Dan?
here. Yes, sir.
I did have some other things I wanted to add. I will post a link in the comments. The ARRL is offering their first OTA the first magazine's free online. So I'll post that in the comments. And then another thing that was brought up in the chat earlier, it won't let me actually post it in the comments. So what it is ARRL.com, ARRL.org/OTA-sample for the over the air, their new magazine that they're putting out. And I can, probably get that in the forums on our site. But another thing that I wanted to also bring up, somebody had mentioned about VE training, and since everything is shut down, I know there has been some discussion. I know that we are able to do virtual VE testing, but I don't think that anyone has actually done it as of yet. If anybody knows anything about that or wants to add anything to that.
I know there's been some that have been done in Alaska, Wayne.
Yeah.
I can add to that as well to kind of mirror what Patrick said. Some of the more remote areas of the country, like Alaska, they do allow some remote testing, but there's always a VE present for those that are testing. So I think some of those parameters are at least being worked out through the various VECs for coordination of that. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see some news of that come out here in the next few weeks. So certainly stay tuned for that.
I'll be the guinea pig if you guys want to test me. I could fail my extra again.
No, you're going to pass it, darn it.
You're
Maybe
not
I'm
an
buddy
extra,
this time.
You're not an extra, Ray?
No, you know that, man. You just like busting on me.
Might you get those books back ever?
Yeah, it's
when I pass.
all the audio, video, and guides to help you get it.
Good stuff.
I just know there's been quite a few people asking about it. But I've seen some actual movement on Twitter of people bringing it up in their communities. And I know it's been brought up to the ARRL. So it'll be interesting if they can figure out a way to do it. And this pandemic has actually brought ham radio into light because, people are being locked in their homes, and there's actually been a growth in people wanting to get their licenses.
Yeah, that's a great point, Wayne. Yeah, certainly ham radio has taken some front page news. I know that usually during tornado season or severe weather season, the neighbors are pretty interested in what my handheld radios are, and hey, can you listen to this, or what's going on, or have you heard about that? So certainly getting some good press for amateur radio here recently. I want to throw it over to Paul. Paul, first and foremost, thanks for a great presentation tonight. I want to thank you for that. Very well done. We're getting great comments in the chat session. So I'm going to let you have the final word tonight on any pearls of wisdom you may have.
Well, Dan, thanks to everybody who put this on. Your Elmering committee has been working hard behind the scenes to try to keep some life in our Elmering night, and this is the first chance we've had to test out this technology, and it worked real well. And thanks to everybody that helped. Terry again sends his best wishes from Salt Lake City, and we may have to use this technology for the next face-to-face meeting. We may have to use it for the next Elmering night. It'll get better each time. we'll learn all about the OBD or OBS or whatever it is that we were. Did I say OBS? We'll learn all about that, and we'll get it all working better next time. And so this club is all about the members, and we're now 141 strong, I heard. So we're doing this for you. And so if you have any suggestions, please feel free to jump in, send an email to the club so we can take your suggestions and run with it. So anyway, thanks again to everybody. 73, back to Dan.
All right, Paul. Well, thanks again, and certainly for the inaugural kickoff, it went as expected. A couple hurdles, a little bit of stumbles, some fumbles, but you know what? That's part of show business, and certainly for those that are joining, you can tell I have a face for radio. So trying to do the full control here between switching between screens and getting the presentation up and going. I'm going to stick to contesting and logging. This isn't, I'm not that great at it, but we certainly made a good run at it here tonight. And I want to thank you for joining us and checking out the Parker Radio Association. We're a pretty open group as it pertains to all of our activities, so be sure to check us out at www.parkerradio.org. And certainly want to thank each and every one of you for joining us tonight. So from me to the rest of the group, we're actually going to do, we're going to change the layout here and see if we can have everyone tiled as best as we can. We got mostly everyone. Poor Elizabeth, I think, got cut out, or at least she's cut out on my screen. But just want to thank you all for coming on tonight. Have a great night, and stay tuned for more fun info and different stuff that'll be coming up for the PRA. So that's about it from here from the N2SRK Shack, and hope everybody has a great evening, and we'll catch you on the air. Have a good one. 73. Good night, everyone.